Hi, this is Mr. Kinnemer, and today we're going to be discussing Chapter 4, Section 4 in our geometry books, using corresponding parts of congruent triangles. Now what this section is going to do is, this is a culmination of the four corresponding triangle shortcuts we've been discussing for the last few days. Side, angle, you get the idea. Take a second and complete this vocab before you move on with this video. And please remember, at any time, if I move too fast, you have the option of pressing the pause button to get caught up. And if there's something you don't get after watching this video, please do not hesitate to ask in class. Now I hope you didn't have much trouble completing the vocab. If you did, please ask me. On number 8 here at the top, we're going to complete this proof, and we're given that segment AB is congruent to segment AD, and segment BC is congruent to segment DC. Now you see that given statement. What we're trying to prove is that triangle ABC and triangle ADC are congruent. And as you can see, we always start with the given statement, and we go from there. Now you will see a lot of reflexive property and third angle theorem. So let's move on here to, after you get that copied down, let's move on to problem number 1. On problem number 1 here, we're trying to prove parts of triangles congruent. Now as you can see in number 9, I've listed the 4 ways that we've talked about proving triangles congruent. Side, side, angle, side, angle, and angle, side. Now to prove that triangles are congruent, when you know 2 pairs of congruent sides, you can use the only options you have where you need 2 pairs of sides. And that's going to be your side, and your side, angle, side. Now the given statement tells us that there are 2 pairs of congruent sides. So on number 12, you can see where I came up with the given statement on the 2 pairs of congruent sides. Also, angle CAB and angle EAD, these angles right here, those are vertical angles. Since we have a pair of angles and a pair of sides, we can use our side angle side theorem, and that proves those triangles are congruent. And since those are congruent triangles, we know that these 2 angles are congruent because they're corresponding parts of corresponding triangles. Now, I'm on the last section of our notes, on problem number 2. And if I've moved too fast, please pause it and rewind so that you can get caught back up. On problem number 2, we're proving triangle parts congruent to measure distance. Now obviously we are looking for sides here. Alright? So as you can see, I've got my 2 given statements here. That segment AB is congruent to segment AC, and point M is the midpoint of segment BC. I also know that because we're talking, not only is segment AM part of one large triangle, it also splits the large triangle into 2 smaller triangles. Therefore, they're the same line. They can't be any different. So that's our reflexive property. And since by definition of a midpoint, we know that point M is exactly halfway between point B and point C, therefore making those two segments congruent. Now since we have three congruent sides measured now, this side, and this side, we can use our side-side-side theorem to prove that triangle AMB is congruent to triangle AMC. And notice they are named the same way. Remember, that's part of our congruence that we talked about in section 1. Therefore, in order to prove angle AMB is congruent to angle AMC, that's because they're corresponding. Both triangles are congruent, therefore all the sides and all the angles are congruent. So what you need to complete is the lesson check. And what the lesson check is telling us is to name the postulate or theorem that you can use to show how the triangles are congruent. Then explain why segment EA is congruent to segment MA. So pretty much, you'll notice by our diagram, we already have a set of congruent angles and one pair of congruent sides already. That should clue you in to what postulate to use. Good luck and work well. One more thing I should mention. There are two lesson checks. The first lesson check on page 3 and the second lesson check on page 4. Please have these completed when you come to class so that we may discuss them. Also, don't forget to rate yourself on your math success. So if there's certain one of these terms that you don't understand, then if you have a low knowledge of this concept, please ask so we can review it. If you have a higher knowledge, you've done well, and so now you're ready to move on to the practice portion.